Let's go, people, let's go! It's Prognosis negative time!
Hi, this is Eric.
Hello, this is Isaac.
And welcome back. It is Prognosis Negative, episode 53, and we're going to take you on a little journey in the coming months, hopefully not longer than a few months. We, myself and Isaac at the very least, are going to travail through the on-screen world and universe of Tron.
The NCOM 511 computer, center of the most calculating intelligence on Earth. Within it, there exists an unknown civilization where man has never been. A startling new world where time and distance defy the laws of logic.
I still do not understand why you want to break into the system.
Because, man, somewhere in one of these memories is the evidence.
Kevin Flynn, computer genius, searching for answers inside the system.
Hey, it's the big master control program everybody's been talking about.
Stop! I'm warning you. I'm gonna have to put you on the game grid.
Propelled into the digital world of the computer itself.
Oh, man, this isn't happening. It only thinks it's happening. Hey, there's been a mistake. I gotta see the guy in charge.
You will.
Who's that guy?
That's Tron.
Trapped inside an electronic arena where love and escape do not compute. The journey begins across an electronic sea on cycles made of light. Enter its world this summer.
Oh my gosh, this is a movie I have wanted to do for a very long time on the podcast. So here we go. Or wait, do they say something like when they go into something like, or like initiate program, or is there some kind of phrase like that?
I don't recall.
I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway for the audience. Have you ever seen this movie before?
Indirectly.
Explain.
Kingdom Hearts 2.
Okay.
Haven't played it, but I've watched people play, and a section of that game takes place in Tron.
I was aware of that. However, I've watched some gameplay of that game, but I haven't ever watched those sections specifically.
And keep in mind, Kingdom Hearts, when they OC themselves, original character, is self-inserted into the story, they do tend to kind of have a, you can call it Kingdom Hearts fan fiction, perhaps, where it's like the original character is self-inserted into the story, and you basically just see...
Right, it's kind of like the characters like in the Lego movies or something, I imagine.
Because
you got because you have the Star Wars people, you have DC heroes. It's not really canonical.
A little different, but either way, the point is that with each movie, so for instance, we'll use like the Little Mermaid, for example. It'll basically, do like a quick version of the entire movie in 3D animation and sassy 3D, but like with computer graphics instead of traditional hand-drawn animation.
Okay, I don't think I knew that part.
So it's a quick and to the point version of the movie, and like SparkNotes version almost, but obviously Donald, Goofy, and Sora are all there and present in the events of said movie or said story. And this happened as well in Tron. Plus the Final Fantasy characters at the time were also present there. So you get to see Aerith messing with Master Control Program.
Okay. It could go no other way, I guess.
Sure, with that franchise, you'll have a field day with interacting and watching that
Yeah,
franchise.
it also reminds me. I never played them, but it reminds me of what was that? What was that thing called? That Lego thing that was a video game?
There's a lot of Lego video games.
No, but the specific one that brought IPs from all over the place together.
Oh, Lego Dimensions.
That one, because it had a massive Doctor Who section, etc., in the game, and so I had a lot of friends my age and older who bought the game just because of the Doctor Who segment.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Which Doctor was it?
They might have had all of them, maybe, in the game, but certainly the ones who were current at the time, like Matt Smith and Capaldi, or Capaldi as it said. But I'm pretty sure they had all the classic ones as well.
Oh, I guess that was before Whitaker.
Yes, it was. And it looked really cool. I never played it, but and of course you could buy the little accessories like little Lego Daleks and stuff.
Well, I remember it was their version of the Nintendo's Amiibos. I remember that time.
Yeah, okay. So had you maybe seen clips of the movie on YouTube or social media or something?
Well, there's a certain screen capture and or just, I guess, what would you call it? Like wallpaper that I have encountered before. And then when I watch the movie, I'm like, no way, that's where it's from. Because obviously this is like the birth of
Where did you? So it didn't show any characters. It was just like
it didn't. So what it was like a decade ago, I was getting into synthwave and still am into synthwave. And this movie is basically the god of synthwave, or at least the first. Maybe not first. That's not true, but it obviously has a big hand in the synthwave movement. I guess more in the new tens. Remember, new tens. We're trying to recreate the 80s. But it's when they're in that canyon. So they're in the solar sail, whatever it's called, and they travel down this canyon, the U Canyon or whatever, and then it lights up red later. I'm like, that's it right there. They use that screenshot in a lot of like synthwave videos.
Oh, okay. Anything else that you recall, or mainly just that?
I mean, I've seen some clips, and
I mean, in the synthwave world.
What did I recall actually? I don't think they ever. Somebody probably.
I wonder if they have any stuff from the newer movies.
See, that's like new synthwave, I suppose. I mean, it's probably what it probably does take place from. Oh, I forgot. I guess the ending credits sequence is kind of similar to Far Cry Blood Dragon. There's a little bit of like, I mean, there's so much from Tron that's in Blood Dragon. I think I see so much, but there's stuff in Blood Dragon that references Tron. But I know like the credits and or at least the user interface I think is similar to the end credits of Tron.
So this could be interesting. Well, if any of you listening to us now have ever heard me and Isaac speak before or separately somewhere else, this should be interesting. Like some of our other recent conversations on this feed and Best Picture and Novas Elitas and MHC now and Romulans Bearing Gifts, the whole thing. This should be interesting.
I'm infecting everything.
Because I always kind of assume that the listenership for this feed is primarily Gen X and older. If you're younger than Gen X and you listen to ProgNeg, please tweet ProgNeg. I'm just so curious if there are many younger people listening to this, because you obviously have me and probably many of the listeners who grew up with this movie and were very familiar with it. Whether we like it or not, we're familiar with it to some degree. And the only young people I'm aware of who especially watch the original, I know a lot of young people who have seen the sequel, but the only young people I know who have watched the original or younger than Gen X is people I see on YouTube doing first time reaction videos. Usually if I ask someone younger than Gen X, oh, have you seen this movie? 9 times out of 10 the answer is no. But many of them have seen the sequel. So this should be fun. I'm sure it will. Well, it'll be fun for me at the very least. So just a little bit of background. Uh, Most people know this is a 1982 film, very much considered a sci-fi cult classic. So I never knew who the director was until right now, since we hit record. Steven Lisberger, and he hardly has any directorial credits at all, and really no film or thing probably anyone's heard of except for Tron. Interesting choice. I wonder if he was. I know in modern times Disney has this thing for just choosing like utilitarian type directors just to get the job done. I don't know if it was like that in the early 80s or 70s with their especially live action productions. I have no clue, but I wouldn't be surprised. But something I just learned when I was trying to look up what he's done as a director, this I did not know. So he was a co-writer for this movie. I had no idea he was a co-writer on the sequel. And I really didn't expect him to be a co-writer on the upcoming film.
Really?
That's really cool.
Okay.
Because my biggest fear about the new one, because on the new one, I have not read anything, behind the scenes or anything like that. I don't want to know anything. I saw the trailer because, I went to movies and I couldn't avoid it 2 times. So I've seen the teaser and then I guess the first standard trailer. And I know I'm going to like that movie. But my biggest fear whenever you have like these revitalized franchises or franchises that haven't had a sequel in a long time, my biggest fear is that like a whole different creative crew will come in, and even though it's a sequel, they'll just like make it their own. But this is cool. And it's weird because I don't know his age, but he must be in his 70s or 80s now. It's not the kind of age group you'd think to be writing new movies in this genre sphere, so to speak. But that's cool though, because that at the very least there should be some, connective tissue or through lines in the overall story. Did you have any expectations of any sort going into this? Just, I'm sure you're aware to some extent. Oh, you're obviously aware of the video game, Kingdom Hearts. You're obviously aware to some extent that it's a cult classic. It's in the zeitgeist. So, with that kind of background knowledge, did you have any type of expectations going into this?
I was thinking this morning, or at least this today, before I watched the film. I was like, at work, and I went, okay, how is this going to? How are they going to present the story? That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I got the beginning of because I saw the trailer. I saw the trailer of the second one, Tron. I want to keep saying Uprising. That's
Tron
not
Legacy.
Thank you. I kept thinking of Tron Legacy. That trailer back in 2010 or 2009. I still remember that one, and so I was getting that mixed up with how this one starts or how this one happens. I'm like, wait, does he get sucked inside a video game? No, this is not. That's not how it works.
Well, hold on, pause. Going into this, did you know that Legacy is a true sequel, or did you think maybe it was like a reboot?
I think it was like a sequel reboot ish because obviously they change a lot. Just when I say change a lot, like obviously the graphics get overhauled or the special effects get overhauled.
But you can obviously imagine how that could totally make sense in universe.
So I knew from like back to Tron 1, I knew that it was, man inside video game world. So I said, okay, is this pseudo fantasy where we're going to go into and present the audience as this is going to be like a fantasy like world, except instead of, magic, it's instead programs, binary, 1 zeros, all that kind of stuff. Things manifested and personified so that we can understand it, materialize potentially. Because I'm like, okay, so it's, trying to put like a story in, what's happening inside a computer. And boy, for 82, like, this kind of predicted, not predicted, but there's some stuff that definitely it has some quite accurate, like, wow, that actually happened. with some stuff, not obviously a lot of stuff. I mean, maybe mainly just thinking like the master control program, perhaps.
Especially if you look at other things that came out around this time that deal with computers or pseudo AI or whatever. I would, I think it's safe to say that they got a lot right conceptually.
Oh yes, not you're. I think you're on the right track there. Before we go any further, let's just quickly say I don't know now. Hang okay, I gotta be careful how I say this, but I don't think this has well. Here I am, person never ever been in the 80s, only seeing it through video and pictures. So I
Mhm.
never experienced it myself. So you obviously are there to correct me on this and rebuke anything I say. I don't know if this is the turn necessarily, because and what I mean by that is I don't know if this necessarily has the look of, I mean, maybe it is, but I still feel like the 70s are still bleeding over.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
everything that was produced,
Don't have the Hangman Zeus around me yet.
I would say things that felt 70s, whether it's clothes or cars or music, is still very present in most American films up to 84.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, 85 is where the worm turns because if you watch 80s movies, there's definitely a difference of stuff pre 85 and post 85.
Yes.
Big difference. So yeah, you are correct about that.
Now, no. At the same time, this is a end of 70s. This is definitely like, okay, we're
Yes.
the turn is happening, but not fully. Like for instance, what I was comparing this to, not quality wise, but just something to help myself, figure out this Logan's Run. I was thinking of the Logan's Run movie from
Yeah.
76, I believe. Very, very different, but obviously we start in the real world instead of that. And that's the present day and it's dystopian. But that happens, and I'm just trying to think. There's some fantastical ideas in that. I just remember like the beginning where they have this like where everybody dies at age
It's like
30.
it's like oh, I was just thinking of the look of the city. It's almost like Epcot Center like realized.
Yes, I'm just
Not that
thinking
I've
of
ever
like
been there, but
because I'm trying to make sense of how, and what you like to say of like go back to try to put yourself in other people's shoes back
you mean
then.
like the audience, you mean?
Yeah, be an audience member in 82 watching this for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And problem is not because I'm a complete and utter like tech geek. I don't know everything about computers. I do know some stuff, but I could understand why this may have been like I don't know if it was a flop, but if it was a flop, I understand why, because there's a lot of like technobabble and jargon, computer jargon that would definitely go over a lot of people's heads. But if you treat this as a non what is it, an unorthodox type of script and or an unorthodox style of movie, it's a good time. It's a just kind of, I don't want to call it a roller coaster ride, but just watching it. It's not.
Well, I wonder, would it be harmed if you look at it just like through a movie critical lens? Like, would there be something that lacks in your opinion? If you don't think about, oh, I'm into tech, or if you just, you're a person who has to watch like screeners for, potential nominees for Best Picture or other awards in the Academy Awards. Do you think this could have a chance through a critical eye who's not necessarily like a fanboy or 22 years old or younger in 1982?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Roger and Ebert thought of this.
Oh, I don't even know. I'll have to look that up too myself.
Roger Ebert, sorry, Siskel and Ebert, pardon me. But that's a good question.
Because you specifically framed it as like, it works pretty well, like sort of for the genre or whatnot, but made it sound like it might not be appealing to like the masses or mainstream audiences, perhaps.
It's just a lot of like we are, because what I meant was as well. When I earlier, as I said, how is this film going to start? How is this film going to happen? Are we? Is it going to be? We're in the real world for the first like 15 minutes. We establish all the characters, and then suddenly Jeff Bridges goes into the inside the computer somehow. I don't remember. Like I don't know how it would have happened. I obviously know how he goes inside the computer, and then he's fish out of water. It's like, whoa, he knows this. No, we do something bold. This movie is bold and is taking a risk by actually showing the contents inside, like all the denizens inside of a computer world in cyberspace. And I'm like, whoa, this is ambitious. I didn't think we would do that. I thought we would
like ease into it, like from the POV character point of
Exactly.
view. Okay.
We just out the gate, like, shotgun. We're doing it. Like it's here, and the door's that way. Because if you can't understand it, or if you can't get along, or if you can't go along with the script and what we're given, yeah, this may not make sense to you.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, from just based off of memory, not because of research. This movie did decently when it was released, but I know it was a letdown in terms of Disney wanted it to be, or Buena Vista wanted it to be a lot bigger.
Oh, I can see. I could see. I don't want to say, were they banking? Not banking. Could there have been other potential projects within the same universe? Would Legacy have come out sooner?
Oh, if it was successful, without a doubt, because the 80s, the late 70s and the 80s were the era of sequels, full stop, for everything, movies. If any movie did good, you guaranteed you were going to have a sequel in those days.
That's true. No, you are right on that.
And I don't know how much this may or may not have affected this movie in particular. Also, going off of memory, I think the video game crash happened in 1983.
I believe so.
And that was not a good thing. And I brought it up on some podcasts. I can't remember what feed we were on or what we were discussing. It was Cloak and Dagger, which was on this feed, episode 50 of Prognosis Negative. When we did that review on the pod, I learned that in 1984, when that movie released by Universal Studios, they were actually trying to capitalize on video games, again at a bad time because the crash had already happened. But of course, the movies were probably in production for a while. But in 1984, Universal released both Cloak and Dagger and The Last Starfighter, and they actually released them in the summer of '84 as a double feature. So if you watched, I think it was Last Starfighter, if you watched it in like its first 2 weeks of theatrical screenings, it was a double bill. And you got to see both Last Starfighter and Cloak and Dagger. And I had no idea they had that association. And the whole point was Universal, they basically asked for 2 movies that had something to do with video game tie-ins. So the plan was to have the movies and have video game tie-ins to go along with. And of course, the games never actually came out. Like they started working on the games, but they never actually got into final form and were never released. But yeah, and both of those movies quite underperformed. Although, again, from memory, I'm pretty sure Last Starfighter did a heck of a lot better out of the 2 of them. But yeah, so this movie, it should be no surprise, was the first movie to heavily combine live action with CGI. That should be apparent.
That was the other thing, is that I thought I didn't think it was video games. I thought it was just computer programs. I thought it had nothing to do with the title character Flynn. He's one who actually programmed and or created some video games that would be in arcades. I thought it was just computer programming itself, but I guess video games to at least entice those kids, because when you think computers, I feel like kids would fall asleep to that in the 80s of just like, oh, boring video games. Oh yeah, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't necessarily think they were boring, but that definitely sweetens the pot if you're going to involve video games and arcades and whatnot. Did the CGI, and there will be follow-up questions, but did the CGI impress you, all things considered?
Very much so. I was like, jaw was dropped. I was like, wow, this needs to be like in the National like Film Museum or whatever
I agree with you so much.
for how like anybody could call us. I'm okay. So when people, when obviously myself included, have beef with Disney remaking a lot of their animated films, sorry, 2D and hand drawn animated films into live action with 3D graphics or 3D computer graphic effects. This is probably almost an animated film in and of itself, but obviously computer programming and computer effects.
Yeah, it's almost like something like bed knobs and broomsticks or something.
Honestly, it's in the same vein as Mary Poppins. Like I don't see how this is any different.
Yeah, Pete's Dragon, the original.
Or Song of the South, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I think I need some Ativan.
Great. We just got knocked off YouTube for bringing
Oh
that up.
yes, of course, but no, actually, honestly, not too many animated sequences in that. I think Bed Knots and Broomsticks and Mary Poppins is more aptly titled with this. This is and that's it. I have not seen The Black Hole, but I know I think they use some CGI effects in that one too.
Off the top of my head, no CGI jumps out at me
Okay.
from memory. It is very much in the vein of the types of special effects in 2001: A Space Odyssey, Aliens, Star Wars, Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah, it's practicality over computer effects at this point.
Yes, very much practical and miniatures and whatnot.
I don't even want to. Well, I will go to my grave. I'm fine with. I do not want to look at the behind the scenes of how they made this because I'd rather let that magician's trick go to my grave. Because
I'm gonna have to mention some of it because it is out of this world.
That's another thing that people will probably find hokey. The movements are all weird. Like, yes, because from where we stand today, this is impressive. This is great. I can only imagine how many people lost their hair just to try and figure out how to make this work, and the amount of crunch that was made to create cyberspace itself.
I'm gonna have to talk about some of it because it's such a big part of the movie.
That's perfectly fine.
But I would still encourage you and others who are unfamiliar to look up on YouTube or on the DVDs or Blu-rays. It is absolutely fascinating to watch the making of, etc. And also, on the other side of the coin, to be fair, while there is a heck of a lot of CG in the movie, like legitimate,
No, quite.
there's also some sequences that are hand-drawn animation.
I noticed.
Yeah. So it's not 100% CG.
No, that's true.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of CG. And another thing that makes it look interesting in a way is that, like modern productions do now with CGI, a lot of sequences were done by completely different CG animation studios that had no association with each other. So you see the work of a lot of different creators coming from different places and using different types of CG programming. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, like with video games in the early 80s, you had the standard Atari type of graphics, like dot matrix, pixelation, etc. But then you had the vector graphic games. If you understand like the difference in, how like the programming works and how the graphics work, yeah, so you have all these different studios who are working with different, hardware and software suites and whatnot. So it's an eclectic grouping of a lot of different artists, basically, and then putting it all together. So the main thing I want to highlight and this will lead to another question if I remember to go there after I say this bit. So one of the coolest things in the behind the scenes is how do they make the characters, the humans, look the way they look in the cyber world? Do you have any guesses before I reveal?
Well, knowing what I know now with motion I know it's mocap, but that probably stands for something. But knowing what I know with like motion capture, they use green suits at one point. Now they've, advanced from that, progressed from that. Not out, just like, they've progressed to different other forms of that. Sometimes you don't, but obviously they had the balls like on the face or on the body. So I assume they use either like maybe green suits or maybe blue suits of some sort. They obviously built the suits as well for like, everybody in cyberspace. But I presume there had to be a lot of like, because they're obviously interacting with sets. I know that for a fact. So most of this was, well, the live action stuff was live action, yes, but they probably shot like, in a studio and then had everything green or blue just to render it back up, but at least give so it kind of looks like a prequel, I guess, for Star Wars prequels, what Lucas was doing with all his shots. But
So part of your answer is on the right track, and then part of the answer is something completely different.
I figured. Go ahead, please.
And before I answer, or give the full backstory on the effects, are you familiar with the music video for Aha Take On Me?
Oh, am I ever? Yes.
Okay, so keep that in mind if you are aware of. Oh, have you seen Superman, the movie, the original?
Oh, that was another thing that I was thinking of with at least I was like, man, these guys, at least some of the programs remind me of, not fully, but remind me of Donner's versions of Kryptonians, except they're in cyberspace instead of on another planet.
Okay. Have you seen, so you've seen the original Donner movie, or any version of it, the original first Superman movie?
Yes.
Okay, do you remember the scenes on Krypton when they have all the bureaucrats or whatever, aristocracy, and they're all talking to Jor-El, etc.?
Very white.
Do you remember how their like costumes like really glowed intensely?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that was like a new type of fabric or whatever you want to call it at the time, and and I think it's something similar to what makes movie screens reflective, and there's like little particles of something, some mineral or something that make them extremely reflective to light. So they used that material, um, combined with, if you look at the making of, and like you said, there are physical sets. So in a way, it does resemble like the previs for the Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones, where they have like those green sets. So in a way, it resembles that. But what it more truly resembles is, if you remember the sets in the music video for Take On Me, how everything's black and white for the pretty much, except for the human beings, although they are black and white in sequences as well. And you know how they look like they're made out of paper?
Yep, or like it's a sketch
or cardboard, whatever. But they're black and white. The sets they interact with. So some of the sets are physical. A great example, and what looks amazing in the behind the scenes, the tank interior that Flynn is in. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know, the beginning.
Yeah. Okay, that is an incredible set. If you can look at photographs of the set, rather than how it looks in the film. So everything that takes place in the cyber world with humans was shot on black and white film.
Oh, interesting.
And so everything on set is black and white, like the Aha video. So they're all wearing white suits with the super reflective material where like the red or blue stripes would be.
Oh, it's like that scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes, it is. And so every part of like the people that glows a color is that reflective material. And everything else they're wearing is plain white. And then if you see the set for the tank, again, it all looks like it's made out of cardboard or something. And everything is white except for the lines are black. Okay, so they shoot everything with black and white film. And then they use the negative, the inversion of the black and white.
Really? Oh, that makes sense now because I should have realized because the way the faces look, it's a little like monotone almost, and I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, how did they do that? And then now you say, oh, black and white. I'm kicking myself. Now that you're saying that they use the negative, I'm like, I'm kicking myself more. Dang.
And so when they do the negative, it even accentuates that reflective material even more. Um, and then, okay, so obviously, or it should be obvious to anyone who's familiar with film technology of the time, all the characters are rotoscoped, right? Especially when they have like some type of fake background, what we think of as green screen nowadays. Whenever they have like a obviously animated or CGI backdrop. So all the characters are acting in real space and they rotoscope them. Of course they do. The outline of their bodies, etc. But not only did they rotoscope the outlines of the bodies, but all the reflective lines, they rotoscoped those as well.
Dang.
And this was done by hand
Oh my word.
for every single frame.
Holy crap.
So someone with like a little X-Acto knife, like cut out of the film, like all the little lines and everything that are meant to glow.
How long did this take?
Exactly. And there's a point with my follow-up if I
Of course,
continue
yeah.
to remember the follow-up. And so they have like the original black and white film. They cut out the lines. So you imagine it being like a stencil. And then they do the negative and then they take the glowing bits. And then they hand paint them the colors they want them to be. And then they have the backgrounds or the digital backgrounds. And you've seen making of like classic animated Disney movies, and
Yep.
they do that process where they have everything like on multiple layers.
Yes, yeah, another multi-layer
So they take
camera.
like 6 or 7 layers of film.
Parallax.
Like one that shows the characters with the lines cut out, one that just shows the lines being red or blue, and they layer all these things on top of each other. Extreme compositing, and it comes out looking like it looks.
Dang.
And it was all done by hand, and it was all cut manually, all these little slices. And the reason I wanted to highlight this, other than explaining how they did this, is to like bring up, they talk about now in a lot of modern CGI heavy films, especially like MCU movies of the last 10 years or so, they always talk about how intensive it is and how there's like poor working conditions in terms of hours per day, etc. Working 7 days a week with hundreds of animators, which is completely understandable. I get it. But I'm assuming this movie was made in 3 or less years. I mean, to produce everything, like the effects and everything. And those guys were manually doing it for every single frame of film in the cyber world. And I just feel like if they could do that, then modern digital artists can do whatever they need to do. Now, look, if you are a digital artist and you work on films and you want to tell me, oh, it's so much more complicated than that, by all means, inform me. I want to hear you.
Tweet him.
But as a layman at Sean Homrig, or Omrig Sean on X,
Clearly.
but as a layman who's never worked with digital art or anything like that, it seems like it'd be tough to do effects like this manually, 24 frames per second. And when you see the final product on screen, yes, you see imperfections, but I would argue that these imperfections are like the imperfections on a vinyl album. Like they add more than they take away. These rotoscoping and whatnot. And I just think it's so impressive. Just thinking about the man hours or woman hours, etc. Like, and we'll discuss this more when we get to the second movie, but spoiler, if you watch the behind the scenes for the Tron Legacy in 2010, one of the very first things the director says is, this is how they did the effects in 1982. And we're not doing that.
Understandable.
That's the very first thing up front. We are not going to recreate these special effects in 2010. So we'll talk about that more next time.
Yes, of course.
So there you go. Now you know.
Follow-up question, go.
Oh, no. It wasn't a follow-up question. It was the follow-up statement of bringing up modern artists,
Right, okay.
modern,
Okay, no, that makes sense.
yeah, rigors of CGI. And, this is why this movie, they may have filmed the modern movie for 9 months, but the guys doing the effects were, busy for 4 years. And I get it. It makes sense. I know you just because it's digital animation doesn't mean it's super simple. But again, mocap is a heck of a lot easier than, again, they're not just rotoscoping the outlines of the characters, they're rotoscoping all those lines that glow.
Here's my follow-up question. Did this movie get at least a Oscar nomination for special effects?
I will have to look that up because I did not have that ready and I should.
And then I just realized, well, this is the same year as The Thing. Crap.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they couldn't be nominated. It just means they might not win.
That's true. I did say no, and that deserves a nomination for its special effects. Shoot. This is bad. I'm going to get crucified for this. Which do I choose? Because both are great.
Well, they were definitely nominated. I have to look further. Oh, yeah. They won some. Oh, wait. Let me verify. They were definitely nominated for some Academy Awards.
I could see, sound design or, sound.
They did not win in the Academy. They won in other award ceremonies for some things, but not for the Academy Awards specifically.
Yeah, I figured.
And they weren't nominated for special effects.
That is a shame. That is a big shame. Because this is not a Star Wars year, so they're allowed to... Oh, I guess Wrath of Khan is this year as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but still, these effects are such a gargantuan task. No offense to Wrath of Khan.
What a great year. Sorry, 82. What a great year.
Oh, man. Back in, I think it was 2012, when I used to really love the Draft House, the Alamo Draft House franchise. I feel like they've turned into McDonald's or Disney now. It's not the same as it was in the old days. Like, they become very corporatized.
Yeah, of
nowadays.
Course. What hasn't?
But back in the day when they were an up-and-coming company, I could find you some, Isaac, and listeners, you can find them yourselves on YouTube. They used to produce these really awesome in-house trailers for different movie specials and things that they would do throughout the year. And I think it was in 2012, they were showing all these in-house ads and trailers for the summer of 1982. That was the promotion in 2012. And they showed, every week of the summer of 2012, they were going to show, a massively popular movie from 1982. And it was gangbusters. And I'll have to send you a link, at least Isaac, later, a link to the trailer, because it should still be on YouTube or somewhere, because I would literally just be at home watching the Draft House trailer over and over of the summer of 82. It was, oh God, 82 was one of the strongest years if you were a sci-fi fan of the number of...
Oh, flip. That was also Blade Runner, right?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, balls. This is a hard one because all those films that I just mentioned had great special effects.
Well, it isn't special effects. What two categories do you think this movie was nominated for at the Academy?
See, either sound, which I could see because it has a really good sound, or at least, score. Pardon me, score. Maybe not. I don't know. People might. The Academy might just be like, it's electronic. Get out of here. We already had that problem with the theremin. Excuse me. Back in the 50s. For Forbidden Planet. So either, I don't know about editing. I don't think so. Cinematography, whatever the equivalent of that is.
I feel like they wouldn't even want to nominate it just because people in the Academy say this doesn't even qualify.
That's true. No, you're right. Not editing, not cinematography. I'm going with
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, best cinematography. No.
Unfortunately. I'm going with Yeah, either sound design or whatever similar would be. Definitely not best original screenplay or nothing that's adapted from something else. That's yeah. I'll go with score and sound design.
Well, you're correct on one. It was nominated for Best Sound. And
I assume it lost.
right, it didn't win in either category.
Right.
And it was also nominated for Best Costume Design.
I just thought of that right before you said. I was like, oh shoot, costumes. Right. Never mind.
Now I need to look up the winners in those categories.
If only Sean were here.
It definitely had some competition for Best Sound. Yeah, I should have thought of that. I'm not sure about costume design, but the winner for Best Sound in all the sound categories, including score, was E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either. And of course, that was Ben Burt for the sound of that movie. And then costume design was Gandhi. And I always feel it's like a cop out for historical movies, although some historical movies seem to look very realistic for the time period they're covering. But generally, I don't like when period pieces get nominated for best costume design. So yeah, those are the winners in the categories that beat Tron. Sound is understandable, but yes, I think this score for Tron 82 is really special, and I just realized it's shocking that I've never owned this soundtrack, nor have I ever listened to it on a streaming service, which seems like a crime because I have always adored it, and I think I adore it even more as an adult.
Yeah, they had the London Symphony Harmonic Orchestra, I think, do some work on it. So it's a mix of both. Taking I guess industry standards.
Yeah, that makes sense too in a weird way.
But then bringing in the synthesizers, and there's an organ in there. Definitely stuff for things to come.
Yeah, it makes sense. Just like they're mixing live action with CGI, it makes sense to mix orchestral with synth.
Because there's still that familiarity. They're not going full on the most it only makes sense that first I don't know if it was the very first, but to have a computer generated individual themselves being the master control program, it makes sense in the movie, but there's no way you would want everybody to look like that or else.
Yes. Do you already know who the composer was for this movie?
It's a woman, right?
Yes.
Betty? No, I looked at the credits.
Do you know what the person has done besides Tron?
That I don't know, so enlighten me, please, and the listeners.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at it, I never would have guessed, but it makes all the sense in the world. It was done by, for anyone who knows film, anyone who's a film nerd has heard of Wendy Carlos. And it's the same Wendy Carlos who did the iconic scores for A Clockwork Orange and The Shining.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Yep, with a lot of Moog synthesizer.
Huh.
And also a Cromar General Developmental System, aka GDS digital synthesizer. The one used for this movie was one of only 10 made of the GDS synthesizer.
How about that?
And there was a musical track from the band Journey and the British band Supertramp.
Oh. Was that the end credits or was that like during the movie? Well, Journey. Oh, well, I don't know Journey, but there was during the credits there was a song by like a band.
I didn't. The closing credits?
Yeah, the closing credits.
I don't even know what the closing credits are like.
It was made for the movie, I think.
But I feel like they're definitely playing perhaps a song at the opening when they show the arcade.
I thought it was synthesizers, but I could be wrong on that. Oh no, maybe you're right. Maybe there is a song at the beginning of the arcade. Maybe that's the licensed version or licensed music.
And this soundtrack, though it was released in 82, or score, because of issues between Carlos and CBS Records, it was never released digitally, including CD format, until 2018.
Oh my word.
So you can only get it on cassette tape or vinyl, I
Huh.
guess.
No wonder they were really like Disney was, hopefully a little more lenient with Daft Punk and hopefully with Nine Inch Nails now.
Yeah, yeah. So, what did you think about this? Because, I mean, the movie in general, the story, etc., the plot, because in a way, you could see a lot of parallels to how we understand the Matrix in the Matrix movies. Do you think they are quite similar or just kind of similar in premise of like the world or the universe?
That's a good point. So yeah, I've been gushing over how much of a technical marvel this is. Like this, watch this movie. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, those in between and unaffiliated, please go watch this movie just for the effects and either laugh at or just balk at. This was
I
'82.
don't know who could laugh at this, but I hear what you're saying.
There are people who think this is hokey, and just I guess Disney
I
in
feel like
general is
they're a
hokey.
minority from first time watchers
Maybe I
I've
don't. Yeah.
watched.
Anyway,
Because most first time watchers I've seen watch this, they are completely flummoxed. They cannot for the life of them figure out how any of this is possible visually. And they're so confused because they're like, wait a second, was CGI this good back then? And they're not just talking about the stuff that's actually CG, they're talking about everything that they're seeing visually.
yes, no,
They're like,
exactly.
wait a second, what's going on here? Like, why does this look so good for a million years ago? Yeah, good question. But the world itself, this idea of programs being alive, this idea of certain, or actually all types of programs having some type of sentience, at least in the machine, like ghosts in the machine, and the idea of people in the real world and transitioning to this world. Do you feel like it's just kind of in the same vein as the way the world works in the Matrix, or very similar to how the world works?
So I haven't seen the full from start to finish the Matrix sequels except for Resurrection.
Not required. You could just base it off of the first movie.
Focus on the Matrix One, which I have seen all the way through. Been a while, but I still remember it. So if the denizens of cyberspace in this movie in Tron are the ones who have some individual freedoms, or at least are aware of, what they are, and that there is, higher beings. We'll get to that later. Um, Agent Smith, I guess, or just the agents themselves in the Matrix. Like, would that be the equivalent of a way of just being aware that they're inside a machine?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Because everybody inside the Matrix is a person stuck inside one of those pods, right? Like,
Yes,
that's everybody. Okay.
yes, they're human consciousnesses that are trapped and existing in that world unknowingly. So it'd be like if there was users who were slaves in the digital world,
Yes.
but they just don't know that they're users.
They don't. Yeah, they have to wake up. So in this case, not 100%, but loosely, very in broad terms, sort of, is to your question. Just because, again, if we equate the denizens of cyberspace and Tron with the agents in the Matrix, the first one at least, sort of, but no, I don't recall many other. Oh wait, is the Oracle in Matrix? Is she a real person or is she a program?
She's a program.
Okay, so maybe scratch that. Maybe sort of.
And in the
Those,
sequel, in a way, like you remember how there's some scenes with like NPC characters in this movie who are just very different looking programs, like aesthetically.
yes.
There's a version of that in the second Matrix movie
Okay.
where we see like a lot of unique program. I don't even know. I can't remember what they're called. Like the things like Smith and etc. who only exist in the Matrix. I can't remember what they call them, but yeah, there's a scene in the second movie where we see a bunch of different, unique special programs.
Okay, and it's kind of funny as well. Just speaking of like special programs in Tron, it's funny how they, I don't know if illicit sites or dark web existed in '82 or whatever it would have been called, but it is funny how they kind of call it like using the red light district as, I guess, inside Tron, or not Tron. Sorry, that's Tron is a person, not the world. Got to make that clear. But inside cyberspace, they use like a real world, not real world, but they use like the digital version of like the red light district for what could be like the dark web, or just illicit sites.
True. That is, I definitely never thought about that before. But yes.
Oh, and having seen Wreck Ralph 2, He Breaks the Internet,
Yes.
kind of a big, wow. They had that big crossover with all the princesses.
I've never seen the sequel. I've only seen the first one.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, well, it's only because it was video games, but I guess Tron has video games, but it's just funny how in, at least Ralph Breaks the Internet, where he goes around the web, the World Wide Web, and has sees the crossover with all the Disney princesses. It is kind of a shame they never alluded to this film, or this film at all, and I'm kind of ashamed by that.
Yeah, and also, I think you told me before you've never seen Ready Player One, the Spielberg film.
Oh, I have. I've never read the book, but yeah, I have.
Okay, so I really like, for the sake of it, seeing all the 80s and other decade Easter eggs, in the movie. But I don't recall seeing any Tron references in that movie. And maybe there's some. I'll have to look later and see if there was some at all, any visual nods or visual cues. But the fact that I didn't notice them, I think, is a shame, if there were some. And if there wasn't, that's also a shame.
The human head of the corporation in this, of Encom, I guess is what it's called. He looks similar to Ben Mendelsohn, I think.
Okay, I can see that.
Krennic, whatever else he's been in, but yeah, just Krennic. Looks similar.
The actor David Werner was so ingrained in my mind as a young kid through this movie and Time Bandits. And that's another cult classic. And Werner is the big bad in both. And because of seeing both of these movies when I was young, he was always branded into my memory. And then, of course, he plays a human character in Star Trek V and a Klingon character. A Klingon character in Star Trek VI. Fantastic. And when I first saw Harry Potter, the first one, I thought Snape was David Werner. Even though the age wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
I thought it was David Werner.
Well, not so much. Yeah, no, this movie has like B movie levels of either like quality or writing or like just the premise, but there is some stuff here that I think elevates it past that, and I mean that in a good way.
I think there's a lot of stuff. I mean, putting aside the breakthrough special effects, I still think there's a lot of things that make this much more than a B movie.
Because it has it's fun. It has like a, not tear down the system, but free the system from totalitarianism.
So speaking of, I meant to ask you this question before you went down this trail, but here we are.
Why not?
Would you consider this movie to be under the subgenre of Cold War era films?
They mentioned briefly, and I thought they were going somewhere with this. There's never a like timer of we're launching nukes. I don't know if the Master Control program is going to lead a nuclear strike or if it's just it wants to become an autocracy.
It definitely seems like it wants to do something on the level of the situation in Doctor Strangelove, I would say.
So this is Terminator 2 years before that. Interesting.
Yeah, I somewhat, yes, I would say. But regardless of mentions of real world political entities or nations, just thematically, do you think this counts as Cold War era film?
Now, inside cyberspace, you're saying?
I'm saying this movie as a metaphor, or however you want to take it metaphorically.
You've thought long and hard about this, so your answer is going to be yes.
I have not thought long and hard about it.
Oh,
But I definitely
okay.
have thoughts, though.
Okay, see, I'm tainted by Godzilla 84 because, or Return of Godzilla, I guess, because that does a great job of using Japan as the middleman between America and Russia to kind of talk about the Cold War a bit. Maybe it gets muddled by the end, I don't know. But
Because they actually do mention the U.S. forces and Russian forces in the movie.
I remember, yeah, I
But
recall
even
that.
if we brush that aside and that scene or that dialogue wasn't even in the movie, would this could this count as Cold War era film, like propaganda or thematic allusion?
I think it just kind of, well, I mean, the whole movie dates itself, I suppose, but even then,
Like if the movie was just the screenplay, do you think it dates itself aside from obvious references to the 80s?
do you count the Cold War itself as it referenced it, like, dating itself?
No, I don't count that.
Okay, because I would count that, but I mean that's not in a negative way. Just
Again, pretend those direct references to the
okay.
world weren't even in the movie.
Because are you saying that the Master Control program is analogous to the USSR with its totalitarian regime, or at least what we see it
Yes,
as?
that plus its political ideology.
And then what is it? And then Finn, Tron, and what's her name?
Users,
The users. Thank you. Uh,
Yuri.
Rory, thank you. They represent, like, America, and it's like, oh no, free market or whatever
Well,
you want to call
America,
it.
yes, but I would say just the West in
Okay.
general as well.
I don't know. I see it more because, like I said, I try to think of this as like a
It's your opinion, so there's no wrong
It is.
answer.
I don't, because I more see it as like a fantasy film of we're trying to slay the dragon, or at least we're trying to slay the evil overlord, and there's control that they have. Like, this is, I see more Star Wars in this than I do
So you're saying it's more
USSR.
like a Mordor versus the rest of Middle Earth,
Yeah,
which is not necessarily like World War One or anything like that.
I get. I mean,
Just
it
an
starts
oppressive
off
evil.
as like, or even think more of the dystopian science fiction films of the '70s as well, where we have a system in place that is.
But again, many of those were, speakeasy Cold War commentaries.
I guess so. I'm trying to think of Logan's Run, but again, but sure.
That too, in a
Yeah,
way, although it's a bit more fantastical.
it's quite. I guess so, but I just don't. Maybe, yeah, maybe I just haven't experienced the Cold War. Well, I indirectly experienced the Cold War, so I want to say no, but I know your answer is going to be yes.
I never thought it growing up, even when I was high school age or early college age. I never had this thought. But watching it today and more recently, and I watched this movie at least two or three times every year. Um, but especially watching it in more recent years with my adult brain that knows a lot more about a lot more, I think it coming out in 82, how could it not? Because practically everything did. Even rom coms, reference the Cold War, back in the day, even if they're not necessarily trying to make an allusion to it. But it makes to my adult brain that had to be on everyone's mind who worked on the story or plot or anything like that. It had to be. But yeah, because it would be shocking if it was just a coincidence that they made such a revolutionary story about about you know free will, um, and liberty versus extremely rigid authoritarian power and control. Just like Star Wars, obviously, it's not just about the Cold War, it's also about other types of rebellion and conflict, but still, it's very heavily rooted in the Cold War. Um, I don't think you could argue that the original trilogy is not connected to allegories of the Cold War, and I would say this is the same in that respect. But I haven't researched this or anything, but I would be shocked to discover otherwise. this is obviously not real, but was it? I mean, like this
You wish.
users going into the cyber world, but for you, because this was definitely a thing for me being young and seeing this, was it neat? Wish I could have thought of a better word. Was it neat to see like a visual representation of what the innards or programs in a computer could be like anamorphosized?
Well, about that.
I'm wondering if you're going to bring up something that I've been waiting for you to bring up.
It's pretty much that's the problem here, is that you have a tainted person or a tainted co-host, because there is something, and I'm
I think I know what you're going to say, but
deeply impressed that, at least in as far as I've recently watched it earlier this year, not the whole thing obviously, but episodes here and there, except for maybe what you could say as, okay, maybe that's just more tennis or ping pong potentially than it is with the discs. Reboot.
yes, I was waiting for you to bring that up because I remember, because of my friend um, uh, Isaac Noir.
Anthony.
Yes, because I know that you and he share an affinity for that series. I remembered going into this, so I was waiting for you to bring up Reboot.
I tried my darndest to not. Now, to be fair, sorry. Reboot doesn't do the, which I'm glad they don't, because I think that was one thing that they said, no, we can't do that. Where in this, the denizens of the cyberspace are thinking briefly. They probably go into it in the sequel under such media. Oh, we have, we know that there are users out there. Both use it differently, which I like. And I think
you can explain to me, because I did watch some episodes of Reboot at the time that it aired, because obviously it was like the first big CG. Wait, it wasn't
television
the first, but it was one of the first big CG television series. So I watched some episodes, but I never watched enough to really get the lore of it. So please explain this to me.
Of course.
How they
Now,
interpret users in Reboot.
One thing that I don't know if this film goes into is viruses. And this is obviously like, 10 years later, because what is that, 94, 93?
Yeah, the layperson wouldn't even know what that meant in 1982.
Yeah, no. And so they don't do computer viruses, I believe, in this movie. But in Reboot, that's a big thing where the main character is kind of like a police officer sent from the supercomputer to mend and defend this place called Mainframe from this virus. And the user is this like eldritch being that you never see.
What does that mean, eldritch being?
So think Cthulhu, think of
Yes.
Lovecraft and his posse, and think of just something that is so beyond like sprite in that series terms, capability. Like they're incapable of thinking what a human being looks like. They're like the users in that series are menaces. They if you what's that one series? If you I guess like in Friday, not Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street. If you die in your dreams, you die in reality. If you die in the game, you die in reality. So this is funny, actually. It literally is the opposite. I think they probably this is where I think like they looked at Tron and said, we're not doing that. Because every time a user, and it's mostly, I think, a personal computer and not so much like a video game, like, a Nintendo or arcade cartridge or console, excuse me. In that they are like the villain of the week, other than Megabyte, the virus, is the user, because the user like pops in at the most inconvenient of times, and Bob, the main character, has to go in there and fight the user basically to make sure that if the user wins, that's bad for Mainframe.
Why is that?
Because then a bunch of the denizens get turned into these like little slug-like creatures called nulls. So this doesn't have like this. There is Okay, there's a religious part of reboot at one point, but it's a little different. It's very much like inside, not outside. Tron deals with the outside and the questioning of existence inside a computer. This is a little different, where we're menaces to the denizens in reboot.
I can see that. The way you were describing reboot at first, especially when you mentioned, I forgot the character was like a cyber cop or whatever. Um, that reminds me of a anime, or I should say anime series I started watching recently that many people have heard of, Cells at Work. Um, some of your descriptions of reboot reminded me of that series and how that works. Are you familiar at all with that series?
I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into that. No, thank
But
you.
you're familiar
Yes.
with it. Okay. So at least you know what I'm talking about. Even though I don't know much about the series, I've only watched like the first 6 episodes and the live action movie.
Hey, whatever happened to the orange?
It's probably digitized somewhere.
Darn, I was really hoping that gag would happen where all of a sudden Flynn just like randomly runs into an orange, like, what the hey is this doing here?
That would be cool. Yeah, that would make sense. It kind of reminds me of some of those scenes in The Prestige with the top hats and the cats.
Oh yeah.
Presumably, if a user dies in the grid, the cyber world,
Yep.
they die. I mean, they'll never be seen again, presumably.
We can only assume, and I'm only saying this just because I'm cutting out legacy and everything afterwards, just for like this film, just to like, keep this
Of
film.
course, I am too. Yeah, especially because you haven't seen it. But yeah,
But it is possible. Yeah, it probably is possible. It's whatever the script says.
and for those, I'm watching this even though I own the Blu-rays. Unfortunately, still not on 4K, but I'm banking after Ares comes out, they release a 3 movie set on 4K. But anyway, um, even though I own the Blu-rays, I'm watching this on Disney Plus, and like even if we look at just the live action scenes in the real world, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with restoration because Disney's pretty big on
Oh
restoration
yeah.
for
Oh
their
yes, they are.
catalog, their back catalog. But it does look fresh, doesn't it? I mean, it does not look like a cheap movie. Or sometimes you'll see a low budget cult movie from the 80s and it's heavily restored, but you could still tell it was shot on 16 millimeter or something. This looks like it was a big time. Like if we just consider the live action scenes, it looks like a big time movie. Am I right?
I'd say what probably helps is, I mean, I don't know how many deleted scenes there are of this live action wise, but there's not many. Obviously, okay, duh. There's not many live action scenes, but there's not many locations either. So it's all. But okay, one. Whoa, that neon helicopter! Wow, that's like it.
Oh,
It
I loved
See, that
that.
feels like it should be more like 80s, but it doesn't feel for that. There's still that 70s carryover for some reason
You
for
think
me,
so?
and it doesn't go over
To
yet.
me, it reminds me of the 80s because I don't know if Tron made this popular. I mean, just with that helicopter. But I don't know if you know, you'll have to look this up later if you choose. Isaac and others listening. But I know many people my age will already be aware of this, but many people will not be aware. Have you ever heard of a series called Automan?
No, not that I can recall.
You can either look it up yourself or I'll send you a link later of just like a clip or something. Automan was a short lived series that came out approximately 1984 on regular network television. And basically, it was sort of like a crime fighter in the real world who was like a digital person, like from the Tron world. It's not the Tron universe, but they were 100% going for the aesthetic because the Auto Man, he looks like a Tron character, but in our real world. And what was so cool is he had a Lamborghini Countach and they did it up like that helicopter except with blue lights instead of red. Oh man. Oh my gosh. It was so cool. They only produced and aired not many episodes perhaps like 13 or something. I don't know. But I was so into that show because they were definitely going for the Tron aesthetic. I don't know if there was many people who worked on the series that worked on the show, but they were definitely going for that.
Yeah, the filming itself of like the live action stuff. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it's like top notch like cinematography, but yeah, it does definitely look clean. You got to give it
Like,
to
it looks like a
Disney.
big budget movie. Like,
It does, yeah.
if the whole movie was live action and we're just watching like a suspense espionage drama or
Thriller.
whatever, yeah, thriller. But I can't think of the word I'm looking for. It's some type of espionage, um, financial espionage or something. I would say if it was a drama movie, yeah, it looks big budget. We'll get back to movie discussion, kind of close it out in a second, but I'm just going to reflect on some of the toys and things I did as a kid because of this movie. So, first off, toys. Somehow I was blessed because I didn't always get the coolest toys at the time. Uh, and, but for this movie, for whatever reason, I got two toys. One was the action figure for Flynn, and the other was the yellow light cycle.
Oh, interesting.
And both the action figure and the light cycle were incredibly cool. So the action figure was similar in dimension to a standard 80s Star Wars action figure, but it had a translucent plastic that had the lines. If it was a model that you put together yourself, they look like decals, but it was more like probably like a paint / print job, and it just looked cool because they had the almost translucent plastic, and then the lines on the outside, and then the figures all came with little discs that could fit on their back or they could hold them in their hand, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And of course, I lost it before I lost the figure, and that was super depressing. Um, the light cycle, of course, you could put the figure inside of it. The windows, you couldn't see through the windows, so they'd just be trapped like in a plastic coffin. But the light cycle looked extremely screen accurate and scale and everything. The wheels, the outer rim of the wheels were rubberized, and I don't know what you call this. I'm sure there's a very common name that it's silly. I don't know, but you would have this plastic sort of like pull string, but it's not a string, it's hard plastic, and it has like the plastic teeth or grooves in, and you would stick it through the rear wheel axle, and you would pull it like how you pull a spinning top, and it would spin the rear wheel, and you just place it down on the ground. And these wheels were like, see, nowadays they just make the shape of a wheel, and then underneath there's a little small plastic disc wheel that actually rolls. But no, these were actual wheels, like miniature, like rollerblade wheels that were rubberized. And you would pull the little thing, and the rear wheel would spin, and you would just drop it down on the ground, and it would take off. And there was nothing mechanical. There was no springs. It was just like muscle power and engineering. And it was the coolest thing ever. No batteries, no nothing. Just pull that, sort of like pulling the rip cable, and it's off to the races. So incredibly amazing. I have been tempted to buy one of the vintage ones for resale. I think you can still get one for under $100, but and I really wanted to buy some of these toys from the sequel, but for some reason I did not. I don't know. I have no explanation. The other thing that really captured me and captivated me because of this movie in the mid 80s was it made me always want to buy a frisbee, a plastic frisbee, from whatever store, and pretend it was a memory disk. Except, circa 84, I actually got a glow in the dark frisbee. and it was the perfect representation for a Tron memory disk. And I'd always try to play with my frisbee the way Rom does when he's just kind of flipping it and twirling it with his fingers. I would bring that glow in the dark disc with me to school. I wouldn't bring it out of school, but I'd keep it in my backpack. And when I would walk home after school, I would have my frisbee and I'd be like pretending like I was Rom and just like whirling it around. And because it was glow in the dark, it looked super cool and Tron like at night. Anyway, those are my toy memories of Tron. And while I'm doing Nostalgia Trip, the actress who played Laura is named Cindy Morgan, and she's known for two roles in her career. This role, and she was the hot girl in the original Caddyshack with Bill Murray. That's what she's famous for in terms of film. And I had the honor of meeting her in 2012, and she still looked absolutely stunning in 2012, and I got her autograph. I was trying to find my copy of Tron and I couldn't, so I just got like a headshot from black and white headshot of her in her costume, not in the movie, but just like publicity shot in her costume in black and white. And yeah, so Cindy Morgan, you were a delight to meet in person.
Jeez, I'm gonna probably sound a little chauvinistic here. What the hey was going on with that outfit she was wearing at the end there, eh? Like, what's...
I have no complaints, especially when she was scaling that wall.
I was confused. Wait, wall? You mean the very end, right? On the helipad?
No. When she's in the cyber world and she's trying to scale a wall, and there's some very Zack Snyder Wonder Woman camera angles utilized at that.
I didn't see any.
Movie.
I was more thinking of just the outfit she was wearing at the end of the helipad. I'm like, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about her costume in the cyber world. It's very form fitting.
Sure.
Before they had yoga pants, they had Tron pants.
Or gaffer tape.
For women, anyway. I have to go back and look at her outfit right now on the helipad because
it's fuzzy, and I was like, "What is that?" Maybe, yeah, I'm probably insulting women's fashion back then. I apologize, but I don't know if I can agree with that. But hey, if she wore it proud, then hey, well, more power to her.
As I said, I didn't notice the closing song and the closing credits, and my movie happened to be on that section just now. And I've never watched the full closing credits, obviously. There's a whole section in Chinese kanji.
Oh, yeah, I saw that when they, showed the people from Taipei. I was like, wow, they actually... And they're not... And to give it, props to Disney, they didn't... It sounds probably rude for, people who were like, oh, who's that? Like, to give credit to. They actually kept it in kanji. And I'm like, wait, hang on. Our Chinese characters.
It's been 40 years, and I've never seen that until now. Oh, okay. So her
mink,
sweater,
I don't even want to call
sweater
it,
or whatever you want to call it. That was a very popular material in the 80s for sure, and probably prior and a little bit after. I think that's what they would call a cashmere sweater. I think. I'm not a fashion guru.
Yeah, neither am I.
I just remember that material was very popular in the 80s and probably early 90s, and again probably prior to the 70s as well.
Well, let me go off of what you were saying before just quickly, because I want to make sure I get it off my brain. Is I found it interesting that at least playing with color theme, I suppose, we introduced early on that a lot of programs who are not in control are, mostly blue. We see other colors, of course, but mostly the ones who we deem as like the freedom fighters, or at least just those who are imprisoned, are mostly blue, right?
Yes.
And then those who are in control are red. So it was very interesting when, especially in the beginning, inside Flynn's video arcade, or just arcade, excuse me, when they're playing the light cycle game. Really cool. I wish that was real. I'm surprised they haven't made like a tie-in version to that, like in modern day. Probably have. Anyway, it is interesting how they were playing with colors, where the users are in that's it, but the programs, the friendly ones, are in the orange colored bikes, and then the ones in control with like a master control affiliated are in the blue ones. So I was like, oh, we're playing with colors now, eh? That's pretty cool.
Some of those colors remind me. Obviously, you can think about lightsabers in Star Wars, the colors, especially the red and blue, obviously. But then when you started mentioning the orange, I never considered that what it represents in this movie. And it kind of, not exactly, reminds me of, let's just say, some Star Wars colors in the live action Ahsoka series. And then I'll stop talking about that. But interesting. Yeah, because I never really thought about that, what you just said about the orange ones kind of being.
Because then when Tron, Flynn, and is it Ron or is it Ram? Because I thought it was Ram, but I guess it's Rom. That makes sense. When they escape, which is really cool. That was a good chase, by the way. I like that. They're all in like red, orange, yellow, or at least just they're not in blues. And I'm like, that's usually we color code to match with whatever our hero characters' colors are. They went
Yes.
with red instead. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because they normally would not do that. Obviously, I mean, go with those color schemes.
No, they wouldn't. So it was kind of bold for them to do that. Made me have to like say, oh yeah, I have to because I really do think that you can't watch this movie in the background. I think you actually have to pay attention to this film.
Well, I think you could do both. I think you could watch it silently and just go for the visuals.
Yes, that's true.
Almost like watching a surrealist film from
No,
like
you're
the
right.
early
Yeah,
mid
you're right.
70s.
Especially when you go into the game in the computer or the game.
Oh yeah, especially of course.
Oh my goodness, that's some trippy stuff.
Yes, but then yeah, if you really want to get the full effect, then of course you need to pay attention.
Okay, I retract my statement, but I agree with what you say. In that, yeah, you can listen to it on mute and watch it. Well, okay, but if you can't see, you have to pay attention.
Yes.
I think I knew. I also was just thinking. Actually, well, first, have you found out the type of?
It's not a cashmere sweater. It's similar to a mohair sweater, which was common in those days, but
I'm familiar with that.
it had like a longer, I don't even know what to call it, frill or fringe. So it's like a shaved mohair, but I'm sure that's not what they call it. I know there's a name for it, but ChatGPT is just telling me it's a fine, smooth texture likely made from synthetic blend or lightweight wool, which I'm sure is true, but it was definitely a fashion thing at the time.
To go with something earlier you had mentioned, and it just occurred to me, because a lot of the users in this users. A lot of the programs are reflective of the user.
Correct.
So, for instance, when Rom, excuse me, is the what like the insurance provider or whatever, not provider, but worked in insurance. Does that mean that his user also works in insurance?
Presumably, I mean, part of it could just be for artistic license,
Of course.
But presumably because Finn has a program that he's using at the very beginning, and that program resembles him. And then, of course, Adele, he has the Tron program, which resembles him. And there's other characters, and even Dillinger and whatnot. So presumably, if we're playing by the rules of this fictional world, there is a guy who used that program for his daily work who looked just like him.
I guess that means this is a very, at least 1982. Do you think there's like less than 1 million programs potentially, other than like maybe pre-existing? Just because if we're just saying, because there couldn't have been more than 2 million people owning like having that kind of
right. But okay, here's the thing: when I say artistic license, what I mean is like, how we've talked about how we as three-dimensional beings could never truly see four dimensions. All we can do is see representations
yes
of what or how four dimensions could be interpreted in a 3D world. In a way, I kind of see the world of Tron or the cyber world as perhaps being a type of artistic license, meaning these are all programs and it's not like they literally, like, if we take this world seriously, like this is based on a true story or something, probably these programs have no phases at all. But to go back to cells at work, they're just being anamorphized, and it just makes more sense to our human senses as us being the viewers to see these human faces and to have some associate with real world characters in the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yes.
feel like that is an artistic or dramatic decision as a courtesy to the viewer, because we could not really understand what it would really be like to live and exist in the digital world, if that makes sense.
This does. And now that also brings to mind why you were maybe asking about similarities between this and the Matrix, at least the first one. Just with, oh, there's a person here, but there's also a person there.
Because I think, to explain what I'm talking about, if one is familiar with cells at work, obviously we have different types of cells and viruses inside our bodies. And obviously they're not actual miniature people like walking around through our arteries and veins and capillaries. Obviously it's all an analogy. And I almost see Tron as like that. This is just a visual interpretation that humans could understand and relate to. But I'm glad I just remembered something I was going to say 10 minutes ago, and it came back to me. So you were talking earlier about the light cycle scene at the beginning of the movie, involving Flynn in particular. And at a certain point they break out of the game arena or whatever, right?
Yes.
Tell me if you had any of these thoughts, or if it's just because I grew up at this time and I was younger, and when you're younger, many things seem possible. So because they break out of the gaming grid and then they get off the reservation, so to speak. I don't even know if you're allowed to use that term anymore. But they get out of their assigned area. And so as a kid playing video games in the 80s, I always thought that if I could access an area outside of the playable area, that perhaps like the movie Tron, I could explore other sections of the video game that were not intended. And I remember specifically, I don't remember the name of the title. It might have just been called Batman. But there was a tie-in SNES game that came out after Batman 89. And of course I bought it. And it was a very high quality 2D side scroller for the most part. Kind of like the gameplay style of the amazing Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, Super Return of the Jedi, if you're familiar with those. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah, I've seen them before.
Okay, so this came out before those, but it was a similar in quality game and movie tie-in, even though it doesn't follow the story exactly of the movie like the way the Star Wars games do. But play style, play mechanics was kind of similar. And if you look up gameplay of that Batman video game that probably came out in 1990 or something, if you look at the graphics and how the game looks, the art style makes it as if, like, you can see the platforms and floor, obviously you can walk on, but the artistic style intentionally has a bunch of shadowy areas that would just appear black on your television screen. And it looks like if you just jump just the right way, you could maybe get off the platforms and go somewhere else. I spent so many hours trying to find places like that in that particular game because it just looks like it's very possible. And I struggled. I never achieved it, but I always thought if I could just slip out, then I can take my little 2D sprite character and go somewhere unintended. And of course, there is a version of this in Super Mario Brothers, except it was sort of intentional. But yeah, that when I used to play games in the 8-bit and 16-bit era in particular, I always would try to get off the intended path. And there's some really cool videos on YouTube with people who do this with modern 3D console games like PS3 and later, or actually some PS2 games as well, where they go off to sections that were not intended to be explored or accessed. And some of those videos are really cool for a range of different video games. But yeah. Um does it just seem obvious or make sense to you why this movie is so high up on my list of not only movies I just love in general, but obviously on the nostalgia meter as well?
Is that you speaking that as yourself now, or
I'm asking you, is it just obvious, or now that you've seen it, do you go, oh, I can guess why you and other people like Carl like really love this movie?
I can see Carl liking this. Yourself? I mean, I think you just like it for just how technologically a marvel it is, and maybe some of the themes it asks.
Okay, as a young person, I didn't think about the themes. Just like I didn't think about the themes in Star Wars until I got to maybe high school age or older. Um, so the themes were not a thing. The visuals definitely pulled me in. Like, to like, oh, I gotta watch whatever this thing is. So the visuals got me there. But honestly, the thing I loved the most after seeing it the first or second time was thinking about being inside of the computer world or how that would work conceptually. Um, all special effects and visuals aside. I had very similar thoughts when I saw the original Fantastic Voyage when I was young, and the same thing about the movie Inner Space, which is similar in some ways to Fantastic Voyage. Um, just the idea of just imagining this could be real, that somehow there is a world, even if it doesn't look like how it looks in the movie, but there's a world of programs interacting with each other and going about their daily business in some type of cyber realm. That was a big deal for me, even at a young age. Um, People know from my podcast that I've always been obsessed with scale of movies and things that involve shrinking or growing in size enormously or significantly. And this kind of falls into that, but more in a esoteric, metaphorical way rather than a literal growing or shrinking. Um, and I told you, I brought it up. There was some heavy metal comic that was in one of the physical magazines in the 80s that I stumbled upon, and it played with this concept of users or humans and some type of grid like or cyber world. And if anybody knows what that story is, please tell me, because I've Google searched for it so many times and I'm just dying to find screenshots or screen caps of the original comic, because not only was it a cool concept like Tron, but the art, the actual illustrations, penciling was in my memory so absolutely incredible.
Do you happen to know? I mean, this yeah, you got to look for the title to find out. But do you happen to know who may have uh, drawn or was the artist behind that issue?
Absolutely not. But if I, maybe now that I use ChatGPT, maybe it will help me locate this particular story from Heavy Metal Magazine. And I will definitely pass on that information, because that was one of the first times I saw something that was like comic book form, panels and whatnot. But at the time when I saw this, which was probably 84, 85, it was the most realistic. I mean, like, what do you call that? When art or illustrations look very real as opposed to,
Photorealism, I believe.
something like that. It wasn't literally photorealistic, but it was very grounded in, like, the humans look like humans. They don't look like Jack Kirby drew them or anything like that. No offense, Jack Kirby. But I mean, it. I had never seen comic book or comic strip images that looked like based on like real. And now this is more common in manga and modern graphic novels, but at the time it was the first time I saw something that looked pseudo photorealistic.
Well, it is quite funny you mention heavy metal and a certain issue. I don't know that issue, but once again, Eric, I noticed in the credits there was a name, and I was like, oh, no way. He was involved in this, eh? And he is affiliated with heavy metal. Can you guess who that was? Without looking it up.
No, I have no idea because I'm not familiar with like popular artists in this realm.
Perhaps you mentioned the king, obviously. Why, yeah, no, he drew things his own way, of course, but this might be the king, the god of French artistry. Probably not. French comics. I don't know. That's debatable. I probably just crucify myself if I ever step foot in France.
I know I have seen documentaries about a very famous French artist, probably when I was looking up stuff about Luc Besson movies.
Well, you are correct because one, Jean Giraud himself was involved in this production, aka Mobius. Whomst, if you recall several months ago, we were talking.
I know who Mobius is. Yes, we did.
Yes, he was involved in a certain production that was never meant to be, except for the Inkle.
I know exactly what you're talking about, obviously.
Exactly. So if you wanted to say, oh, there's a bit of Dune here, yes. He did some of the backgrounds, apparently, conceptual backgrounds for cyberspace, or the electronic world, as they call it.
I did not know that.
And that made sense because when they go to, when they go to that, I forget what it's called, but when Tron and what's her name go to that one location that they need to go and interact with the beam to see the user, or talk to the user, excuse me. The guy there who's also, representation from the real world, I forget who it's based off of, or what's that? I guess the guy who started it, whatever his name was, who started NCOM. He's wearing something that looks okay. Obviously, it's there, but I was like, that looks. And it's even some of the designs of the suits and like what the guards, like the master control guards, are wearing. I'm like, this is not similar, but I get this feeling like what are these costumes? Now, it could have been somebody else, but I'm like, oh, no wonder. If Mobius is involved in this, then of course, like, there's a bit of a French connection to this. But boy, it is out there. Like, it is, his work is kind of, you can see and Ron Cobb as well was involved in this, who was involved in alien stuff. But yeah, it's just funny how, this has a bit of Mobius in there, but there's almost like a it's very different than what I usually traditionally think of Mobius as.
That is absolutely fascinating because you have 100% taught me something I never knew about this movie. And gosh, now I need to see a list of all the different types of, or not types, but the movies that Mobius was consulted on, like for previs, pre-art, or whatever.
I don't know if he was involved with Blade Runner, but it wouldn't be surprised. I know he obviously had a hand somewhat in that, at least indirectly, perhaps, but maybe it was directly as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good old Mobius.
More important than we think.
Any final thoughts or reactions or feelings, opinions on this movie before we give our ratings and final thoughts?
It's surprisingly not a anti-corporate movie, which is surprising. And even with Dillinger, is that right? Yeah, the name's Dillinger, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Like, first 30 minutes, like, we kind of have him not be as in control, especially inside, like, his representation inside of cyberspace. I was actually, like, Master Control Program kind of has a leash around him the whole time. And I'm just surprised as how, like, a subversion for me was like, oh, he's not in control. Obviously, that's why there's master control, of course.
Right.
And there's no attempt for him to, like, swindle and go behind master control. That would have been interesting if they did do that.
Yeah, master control is definitely a proto Skynet.
Oh, 100%.
Very
absolutely
clearly.
Like, especially with like, I have images of the Kremlin now. It's like, that can't be good. So how come the guys at Disney didn't sue Cameron for trying to steal their idea? I say steal it. Yeah, that's not true.
I'm sure someone had the idea before Tron as well.
Exactly.
Like Asimov and other people.
Yeah, his name's Harlan Ellison.
Okay, there you go.
So I maybe anti-corporate's not the right word, but the thing of it is that there's never a point where like capitalism or a corporation bad. It's never about that. It's literally about the program itself that's bad, and how it limits people.
Well, it's the program, but it's also the man, because it wasn't master control. Like, the reason Flynn is involved in this whole situation is because basically Dillinger and or Incom stole his intellectual property. And MCP didn't really have anything to do with that. And we know this because MCP brings up not so fast, Dillinger. I could print what I know and get it out to the media. So he's kind of using that as like leverage blackmail.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it is pretty funny how at the end, maybe I have to retract my statement on that, but it is funny how at the end, Flynn becomes the man. I guess, gets what he deserves, obviously, but it is just funny how we went from like, all right, like, we're going to find the truth and then get, myself into the top position.
Yes. And it talks about how it's already poked around. I don't know if it specifically said the Kremlin or
Pentagon,
CCP, but then it says, it's been poking around in the Russian military, and now it's thinking of looking over at the Pentagon.
Yeah, I also like that line, like, "Oh, I'm beyond corporations." I'm like, whoa,
which the Pentagon mention makes me think of something else besides the Cold War. I've told you before, the first time I had access to the internet, like at work, was in 1997. And that's when I worked in the DC area. And, I didn't know much about the internet and how it worked. Like things that are very common knowledge nowadays, I did not know in 1997. And let's just say, because at the time, the only place I had access, aside from going to like a university library, the only place I had access to the internet I had access to dial-up, but that's not really, I'm not going to consider that true access to the internet. By the way, speaking of dial-up, I think AOL is finally ending their dial-up service in a month or two, and it will no longer exist as an option. But anyway, the only way I had access outside of a university to what we consider high-speed Ethernet or whatever you want to call it was at my work computer in 1997, which was a DoD computer system in the Washington, D.C. area. And because I was new to the internet, like most people at the time, I didn't consider that they would track where you go and what you search. I know it sounds dumb now, but I didn't consider that some entity or program could track what you're accessing on the internet. Does that sound dumb? Like, to not consider that?
Well, I mean, it's okay with Santa Claus, right? We're all okay with that.
Sure. I literally didn't realize that someone would be tracking. Like, I knew at the time that, if you call a phone number from your phone, I knew that was discoverable information. For some reason, I didn't translate that into the internet and your browsing history. Obviously, I knew you had a browsing history in your browser, but I didn't think about other entities being able to monitor that from afar. Anyway, so let's just say I access things on my workstation computer that I shouldn't have. and I literally got a memo sent to me from the Pentagon. And it didn't get into specifics, but it said, "This is your warning. Stop what you're doing." And no, I wasn't getting into some crazy top secret files or anything that had to do with the military specifically. But let's just say that was the last time I ever accessed something I shouldn't on my work computer.
Was it a letter that you got, or was it an email?
I can't remember if it was physical paper or an email.
Darn, I wish you still had that piece of paper. If it was a physical
But
paper.
whether it was a piece of paper or an email, they CC'd my boss. And I was like, oh boy.
Gulp.
So yeah, that's how I learned people know what you're doing on the internet.
Either way, there's probably a message in here somewhere. I'm not really maybe at the right mentality right now or the right state of mind to look over it, but I just know that there is something about like, corporations, but it's not them, it's the master control program. But you're probably right on that.
Yeah, well, it starts with the corporation, but it becomes their own creation that becomes the bigger bad. It's kind of like when you have Darth Vader, but then there's an emperor.
True. This is true.
But I feel like I haven't done this movie justice because going into this discussion, I was imagining in my head that this was going to play out like our 2001 discussion.
Okay, I don't know about that. We need Caleb for that.
Well, it's not, I mean, that was a wild discussion. I mean, the way it just was freewheeling all over the place into philosophy and other things. Or I was imagining something even like our Legends of Korra discussion not too long ago.
Ah, boy, I'm letting you down. Sorry, man.
No, it's not you. It's definitely more me if it's either of us.
Well, I'm cooked. I know that for a fact.
I am cooked too. Not on the movie, but because
That too, and I'm just
it's late
like,
right now, and I've had a long day. I'm very cooked in that sense.
and baked.
But that's the bad news for me, is that I was building it up. But the good news is we still have Tron Legacy. And there's going to be a heck of a lot more to talk about building upon. Like, this is laying the foundation.
Yeah, it is.
There's going to be plenty more to discuss after that. And not only that, but Tron Uprising, which I only ever saw the first 3 episodes or so of, and I really enjoyed it. And I really want to know where they take that storyline in 19 episodes. So we will get to that eventually too. Don't know if that will drop pre or post Aries, but either way, that'll be exciting because neither one of us has really seen that. So,
well, hang on a second. I am the average audience member listener of this podcast. Eric, how exactly are you going to be doing Tron Uprising? It is a 20 episode series. How will you and your co-host manage to do that, especially on a channel that you've never done television on before?
Good question. Although we did an April Fool's episode once on this feed where we sort of did television, except it is not listed as television and it was listed as a movie. For old-time dedicated listeners, you know which episode I'm talking about. But still, that doesn't really count because it was an April Fool's joke. As lame as those are. And I still have someone who was still complaining years later that they wanted the proper episode. And I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. But anyway, I know we're going to do it in parts. Like, we're not doing it in 19 parts. That for sure is not happening. I know we've discussed tentatively doing it in 4 parts, but I am probably going to preview some of it and see if that makes sense or if it makes sense a different way to split it up. Because I don't know if it's just one big serialized story or if there are mini arcs. I have no idea. I'm probably going to take a glance overview and decide if we can just do it in 2 episodes to make it easy on our ever persevering editor. Yeah, Inside Baseball, I pitched that we do this as a video episode and that Caleb rotoscopes me and Isaac by hand, digitally by hand, and changes our backgrounds as we discuss the movie. But these guys were like, hell no, because that's going to take 10 years to produce.
Wait, yeah, this just in. Wait, just I'm getting some news from that. Yeah, fat chance is what Caleb's telling me.
Well, a kid can dream. Okay. So to keep it easier, our compromise was just doing audio only, possibly 4 parts. But if it makes sense to do in 2 parts, the whole entire 19 episode season, yeah, TBD. But right now we're going with 4. And don't think we're finished yet, because before we rate this is not usually the way I do it on Prognosis Negative, but I've just been doing so much Best Picture podcast in recent years. I'm going to consult old Rotten Tomatoes and find out what it has to say about Tron 1982. So, consulting the Rotten Tomatoes on the tomato meter, which is the critics, it holds a barely fresh 73%. Barely certified fresh. I think fresh is 60% and up, but certified fresh is 70 and up. With the popcorn meter, which is the general audience's, it's a 69, which is, yeah, good, but not great. Let's see. This is what our little blurb has to say. Though perhaps not as strong dramatically as it is technologically, Tron is an original and visually stunning piece of science fiction that represents a landmark work in the history of computer animation. Yeah, I agree. Isaac, what is our unit of measure? If you don't have one, I have one.
No, I got one. I'll hear what you have to say as well. What are those in real life? They do exist, but what are those like scoopers that throw the balls in this?
Oh.
I almost want to call them lacrosse heads, but I know they're not that.
No, they're not. That is a very popular sport in Central and South America.
I've seen it before. Yeah, I know exactly. I've seen the
Yes, and I never knew what it was called until I watched the series Mad Men, of all things.
That's funny. I almost wanted to call it squash, but it's not squash. There's another thing where what they didn't do is it wasn't, oh, Flynn is geek and outcast. Nobody understands him in real world. He has all these skills that he has amassed in the digital realm, and then one day he finds himself getting sucked into cyberspace and finds that not a god necessarily, but his skills are showcased, and he is much better in the digital world than he is in the real world. And then he goes back to the real world and goes outside or something like that.
Yeah, in a way, they kind of play on the same theme in the movie The Last Starfighter. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not seen that, no.
Yeah, it's sort of a play on the same theme in a way, but not going into a computer itself. I can't tell if the word I found only refers to the Tron world or it's the same name in the real world and the Tron world. I guess it has the same name in both the Tron world and the real world. Okay. So it's obviously based upon, or I don't know if it's obvious, but there's a real world sport that is very similar, except they have these rings attached by ropes and alligators. No, there's something like that. It's one of the few real world sports, I think, that sort of exists almost on a 2D plane, a la Super Mario World. Because I used to always imagine what would Super Mario World look like if it was in 3D, and someone has done that. It's posted on YouTube now. But back in the 80s and 90s, I used to imagine, like, you're just a man. I used to picture it, if it was real, as like a man stuck in an ant farm. And the real playing field for the game called High Ally, and it starts with a silent J. The actual gaming, it's like a squash arena, I don't know what you call it, squash court or whatever.
Yeah, squash court.
Except in the real world, the highlight playing field, which is much larger than a squash arena, is 2D like you're in Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers, because it's literally like this a theater set or a sitcom set where it's a 3-wall arena. Is that not wild? Like, can you think of it? It's like playing squash with 3 walls instead of 4 walls. And in Highlight, you have in the real world game, it's sort of like a handheld wicker, but the name of the scoop is a cesta, and apparently they call it by the same name in the Tron wiki.
Oh,
Cesta.
nice.
Cesta.
At least they brought it over. That's fun.
Yep. That name was given to it in 1875.
All right. Well, then they probably call it something else as well back in the day. So out of 5 cestas, did I get that right?
Okay, cestas. And the playing area in the real world game is called the fronton. It's probably pronounced in Spanish.
Yeah.
Fronton.
Fronton.
But that's what that 3-wall arena is called.
That sounded French.
Fronton.
Sorry.
So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, okay. Out of 5, I'm just going to say mine because if anyone knows me,
Please.
It's obviously a 5 out of 5. Like, without question, it's 5 out of 5 in my mind. Is it a perfect movie, like, especially for a non-fan? Absolutely not. But is it a perfect movie, in my opinion? As a lover of it? Yes, it is essentially flawless, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. Like, you could argue, especially in some of the real world scenes with some of the side characters besides Jeff Bridges, oh, maybe it's not like the best acting. Like, you could argue that really just Dillinger and Flynn are the best actors and everyone else is just like a human NPC. But that's not the way I think about this movie. I love all the effects, always have. There's some particular effects that really stand out to me. Probably 2 of the best iconic scenes visually, and results may vary based on other opinions, but I really like in the very beginning when you see sort of like a Tron-like figure and like the light kind of bleeds out and it comes apart. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
One of my favorite visuals. And then the other one that's very obvious is when Flynn gets sucked into the cyber world, and it's sort of a digital version of what happens to Dave at the end of 2001.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And those are absolutely 2 of my standout visuals in the entire movie. And something I meant to mention a long time ago, and I know me and Carl share this affinity. We mentioned it on a recent podcast. Can't remember which one. So after seeing this movie, I was already obsessed with taking things apart when I was a kid, like taking apart like a hand radio or a walkie-talkie or a children's tape cassette deck. After seeing this movie, and I wonder how many kids were affected in the same way, like me and Carl, I started taking apart all the electrical devices I could get my hands on to get to the circuit boards. And I would just get a circuit board, the silicon with the little transistors attached to it. And I would just look at it up close and imagine it being a cityscape. And I know Carl did the exact same thing, and I'm sure many other young people in the 80s did that. And yeah, that was because of Tron. 5 out of 5. You, Sir Isaac.
What was the name of the piece of equipment called again?
Cesta.
Thank you. For me, I will give this 4 out of 5 cestas. I'll be kind to it tonight. For being 90 minutes, I think this stays its welcome, not overstays, but I think this keeps audiences.
I agree with you. It feels like it's the perfect length.
Yeah, this does. Yeah, and I kept looking at I kept checking the time. I did that intentionally because I was like, wow, this is actually moving fast. And that's the smart thing to do, is leave the audience wanting more. This is a technical masterpiece. You need to see this just to, appreciate the effects for the time and say like, oh man, this holds up.
Well, again, even for modern times, present day, you need to respect it because nobody would undertake this type of imagery
Well,
with the same methods. Oh, thank you for bringing this up. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish, and then
yeah, of
I'll say
course.
something I meant to say a long time
Well,
ago.
I mean, that's when you have D money, that also kind of helps. I suppose they spare no expense in this case, and yes, I can definitely see a lot of people probably scoffing at some of the way are animated in the cyberspace, and again, the acting may come across as dry or stiff or just not there fully.
For sure, I could see that.
But like I said, this is kind of a unorthodox type of movie. I kind of find this maybe not fully indie, but I don't. It's not B, but it's also more.
No,
It's big studio, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's doing its own thing, which is fine. It doesn't need to be the same movie as everything else. But either way, yeah, this is. I'm still going to give it a 4 out of 5. Just for even attempting to try and have a story of social class structures.
I'm very pleased to hear you say that because based on the commentary, I could have seen you vacillating between 3 and 4, and I'm glad it turned out to be.
It
4.
would have been 3.5, but because of my previous numbers or rankings for Star Trek episodes, it's like, crap, I gotta be nice to something.
I always say it doesn't work that way. Like, oh, I gave this episode of this show a 3, and I gave this other movie a 4. Therefore, this is better than that. No, because I consider different series and movies as like apples and oranges, and so to me, all the different movies and shows I rate, it's like each is working on its own scale. And I don't mean for that to sound like a cop out, but in my head, it completely makes sense. Because like I rate rom coms and I rate like mainstream comedies much differently than I rate like a Nolan movie or a Kubrick film.
That's true.
So on special effects, something I really wanted to mention, aside from the things I already mentioned, something I've noticed in recent years, especially because I've watched a lot more film from other decades, especially decades before I was born. Something I have really noticed in the last 5 or 6 years about Tron is that if we take the CGI out of it, because obviously that's a newer technology. So let's take the CGI computer generated imagery out of the equation and we just look at everything else. Largely, the effects are effects that have been around since the silent era of film. And they use them heavily, the stuff that is not CG. And the best examples I can give so that someone can try this for themselves and tell me if I'm crazy or not. I think not on this particular subject. If you watch Metropolis, which I think came out in 27 or something like that, and if you watch, and that was part of German impressionistic film, and they were known for their lavish, extravagant special effects. Metropolis is just one popular example, but there was many others. And if you look at something like, there's a movie that Caleb brought to my attention a couple years back, and it's because it stars a certain actor named Basil Rathbone, who is most famous. He's famous for many things, but he was most famous for playing Sherlock Holmes in these sort of B-movie films that came out mostly in the 1940s. And Caleb discovered this earlier film that he starred in where he played also a detective but not Sherlock Holmes. There was a film series in the late 20s, early 30s called Philo Vance, and he was a detective like, like Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot, other famous like literary detectives, and they made a series of relatively low budget films as well. And when I say low budget, I mean there was the big features, obviously in Hollywood, and then there was the movies you would watch like on a Saturday matinee or something. Not necessarily a serial like Flash Gordon, but not big budget feature things that were going to be nominated for Academy Awards. And so the character of Philo Vance was played by different actors in some of this in this film series. But in 1929, in the Bishop murder case, Basil Rathbone plays the titular character. And even though this is a modest budget film of runtime of like 79 minutes, and it's mostly drama slash detective stuff, like there's no action sequences. Something that jumped out at me with this movie from 1929 when I watched it a couple years ago. Firstly, everything has a very Art Deco look, like Metropolis, even though Metropolis is set in the future, this is set present day. But extravagant use of very Art Deco looking matte paintings. Very reminiscent, weirdly, of Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back, except it's New York City. And there are some really amazing shots, composite shots, matte painting shots, and it's just a modest budget movie in 1929. And if you go back and watch those early examples of special effects, and it wasn't just in those two movies, it was fairly common in a lot of movies in the late 20s, early 30s. And if you go back and watch Tron 82 now and subtract the CG sequences specifically and just look at the other types of matting and other things in the cyber world, I swear to you now, it's the exact same type of film effects slash trickery. The same stuff that has existed from the 1920s is largely what makes up the effects in Tron minus the CG. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. And closing out the show today, this is Eric.
Goodbye, I'm Isaac.
And until next time,
I am starting my journey to become the best disc wielding or memory throwing athlete in cyberspace.
and the balcony is yours.
Prognosis negative.
I like that because you don't do what Josh does, but you do like your Isaac thing, and I like that.
So, riddle me this. What was that building that they used? Probably two different buildings,
For
of course, but
NCOM?
for NCOM, like on the outside shots and then the inside shots, it looked like a freaking Hadron Collider or particle
Oh.
accelerator, excuse me.
Wow, I never. Wait, are you talking about the building where Dillinger has his office, or are you talking about where they seem to have like a lab?
Well, is that not in the same building or is it like offsite?
Well, I'm assuming it's shot in two different places as well.
Oh, sorry. Well, in the movie, it's all in the same place, right?
Probably.
Okay. Basically, yeah, all the shots that imply that NCOM is in the same building, which is, yeah, I assume Dillinger's suite was probably somewhere else, but still, the outside shot when the three of them are going into that building, and then obviously the inside laboratory, again, like I said, looks like a particle accelerator. What locations were those? That I want to know.
Oh my gosh. I never would have. Oh, this is in the new movie. Okay.
Oh, hey, spoilers.
Spoilers. Let's just say that Encom Tower in the new movie is not very far from you in the real world. Let's just say that. But in Tron 1982, it was much further away from
Okay,
you.
let me take a shot in the dark and say, which building would I suspect it's gonna be downtown? There's no way it's the Civic Plaza near me.
It's not an extravagant building, and it's, quite monolithic. It's not, they're not taking great liberties with its architecture. Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, go ahead.
It is Vancouver's Shangri-La Hotel, which is by the AT&T building now known as the AT&T Center. Oh wait. Oh, I am sorry. In Tron Legacy, it was Vancouver's Shangri-La Hotel. In the newest movie yet to be released, it's the AT&T building, which is in Los Angeles.
We don't have AT&T up here.
Right.
Oh, so they're actually okay. Good, they're actually filming in Los Angeles. Good.
Okay, so they're in Los Angeles again. The original was in Los Angeles as well.
Well, yeah, that skyline, of course. Like that's, yeah.
Ooh. So if I'm reading this correctly, because I'm looking at the Google AI answer, if I'm reading this correctly, I think they're using the same building for the third movie as the first movie.
Ooh, I mean, it's still there, right? Sort of. I assume it's been retrofitted, or at least it's been upgraded.
The address in Los Angeles is 1150 South Olive Street, now known as the AT&T building or AT&T Center. But in our next movie, that location was relatively close to Sir Isaac.
Not
Sorry, I got my lines crossed.
that's fine. But still, yeah, with the inside, at least I want to know what the inside was.
I don't know about the laboratory area, but no shock. The other interiors were mostly Disney Studios.
Well,
But obviously not that thing that looks like the engineering section of Star Trek 2009 Enterprise.
oh yeah, I know what you mean.
I'll have to Google further for that.
I wonder where Flynn's was. What neighborhood Flynn's was shot at.
Oh no, maybe not. For a second, I was like, "Wait, isn't Flynn's in Ready Player One?" But no, I don't think so. Never
I don't
mind.
think so. You know, that movie could have easily given us, because they obviously have the Acura bike. That could have given us both the Acura bike and the light cycle together.
Gosh, oh, that would have been so good in the race in the beginning. And thank you. You reminded me of something I wanted to bring up during this podcast.
Except the light cycle would have totally destroyed the Acura bike, even though I love that bike.
Yeah, well, it definitely uses its own physics or version of. Flynn's Arcade was located in downtown Culver City, California, which is, of course, in the Los Angeles area.
I wonder if it was an existing arcade, and they just put Flynn's on there, and then, just filmed it for there, and then afterwards it was still an arcade. Probably not an arcade today.
Who's to say? Because, the old fire station that was used for the original Ghostbusters headquarters was definitely used in other movies as well.
It was.
Yeah.